10. Kanowna, Western Australia. The story begins in 1893 when prospectors discovered rich gold deposits in the area. The initial find was so significant that it attracted a flood of fortune seekers. The town was originally dubbed White Feather, a name shrouded in mystery. Some say it was named after a prospector who wore a white feather in his hat, others believe it symbolized the hope and purity of newfound wealth. By 1894, the town was officially gazetted and renamed Kanowna. The origin of this name remains uncertain, adding to the town's mystique. Was it derived from an indigenous word, or was it a creation of the settlers' imagination? As the gold continued to flow, Kanowna's population swelled. By 1899, over 12,500 people called it home. The town boasted 16 hotels, establishments like the White Feather Hotel and the Miners' Arms were always teeming with patrons, their walls echoing with laughter, music, and the occasional brawl. 2 breweries, crafting alesh that provided solace after long, grueling days in the mines. An hourly train service, connecting Kanowna to Kalgoorlie, facilitating the movement of people, goods, and gold. The streets buzzed with activity. Merchants hawked their wares, blacksmiths hammered away, and children played amidst the clamor. Yet, beneath the vibrant exterior, shadows loomed. The prosperity of Kanowna was, tragically, a fleeting illusion. The easily accessible alluvial gold was rapidly exhausted. Miners dug deeper, but the yields diminished. By the early 1900s, the decline had set in. Businesses that once thrived began to shutter. The once packed hotels saw fewer patrons. The hourly trains became less frequent. Families, disillusioned and destitute, packed up, leaving their homes and dreams behind. The Great Depression dealt the final blow. The railway station, once a symbol of connection and progress, was closed. By 1953, Kanowna was abandoned, its buildings succumbing to the relentless march of time. Today, only the railway station platform, 2 cemeteries, and scattered mine workings remain as silent testaments to a bygone era. As with many ghost towns, Kanowna is not just a relic of history but a repository of legends and eerie tales. Visitors and locals alike have recounted inexplicable experiences. Phantom footsteps, in the stillness of the night, some claim to hear the unmistakable sound of boots crunching on gravel, as if miners from the past still tread the paths. Ghostly apparitions, figures dressed in period clothing have been spotted near the old cemeteries, vanishing when approached. Mysterious lights, flickering lanterns are said to appear near the abandoned mine shafts, leading some to believe that the spirits of miners continue their eternal vigil. One particularly haunting tale involves the Kanowna Cemetery. It's whispered that on certain nights, the mournful cry of a woman can be heard, believed to be the spirit of a widow searching for her lost husband who perished in a mining accident. While the original town of Kanowna faded into obscurity, the allure of gold never truly disappeared. In the late 1970s, soaring gold prices reignited interest in the region. Geologists and miners returned, armed with modern technology, to explore the ancient grounds. Their efforts bore fruit. In 1986, the Kanowna Belle gold deposit was discovered. Unlike the easily accessible alluvial gold of the past, this deposit was deep underground, requiring significant investment and infrastructure to extract. Mining operations commenced, and by 2002, the Kanowna Belle mine employed over 300 people, breathing new life into the area. Yet, even with this resurgence, the original town site remains a ghostly relic, standing in stark contrast to the modern mining activities nearby. Present-day Kanowna is a place where history's echoes are almost palpable. The Kanowna Heritage Trail offers visitors a glimpse into the town's storied past. Markers indicate where bustling businesses once stood, and the cemeteries serve as poignant reminders of the lives that once thrived here. 9. Hill End, New South Wales. The story of Hill End begins in the 1850s, when gold was discovered in the area. By 1872, the town became the site of one of the richest gold discoveries in Australia, the Holterman nugget, the largest gold specimen ever found, weighing a staggering 290 kilograms. The town exploded with life. Thousands of prospectors, merchants, and their families flooded Hill End, hoping to strike it rich. At its peak, the town had 8,000 residents, with 27 pubs, 5 banks, churches, schools, and even a theater. But life in Hill End wasn't easy. Violence, accidents, and disease were rampant. Miners died in cave-ins, and fights over gold claims often turned deadly. The town's cemetery quickly filled with the graves of men who came seeking fortune but found only death. And some say, their spirits never left. Like many gold rush towns, Hill End's prosperity was short-lived. By the 1880s, the gold began to dwindle, and miners moved on in search of richer ground. Businesses shuttered, families abandoned their homes, and Hill End slowly decayed. By the 1920s, the town was all but deserted. Buildings crumbled, and the once lively streets were reclaimed by the bush. But some visitors claimed the town wasn't truly empty. They spoke of strange figures seen in the ruins, ghostly lantern lights flickering near abandoned mines, and the unmistakable sound of footsteps on gravel, even when no one was there. Was it just the wind? Or something more sinister? Hill End is widely regarded as one of the most haunted towns in Australia, and the stories of paranormal activity are as rich as the gold that once filled the earth. The Lady in Black. Many visitors report seeing a woman in a black dress wandering through the ruins of an old hotel. She's believed to be the ghost of a miner's wife, who died waiting for her husband to return from the mines, a return that never came. The Phantom Miner. Tourists exploring the Bald Hill mine have heard the distant sound of pickaxes and shovels echoing through the tunnels, only to find the shafts completely empty. Some even claim to have seen a shadowy figure deep in the mine, carrying an old-fashioned lantern. The Crying Child. Near the Hill End Cemetery, visitors report hearing the faint sound of a child crying, even when no children are present. Legend has it that a miner's child fell into a mine shaft and drowned, and their spirit still roams, searching for their father. Local residents, the few who still remain, treat these stories with respect and caution. Some refuse to visit the old mines or walk through the town at night, believing the spirits of Hill End are still active and restless. 8. Blinman, South Australia. In 1859, a shepherd named Robert Blinman discovered a rich copper deposit while tending his flock. News of the find spread like wildfire, and soon miners and their families flooded the remote outpost, desperate to claim their share of the earth's bounty. By the 1860s, Blinman had become a thriving mining town, with over 1,500 residents, bustling streets, hotels, blacksmiths, and even a school for the miners' children. The copper mines dug deep into the rugged hills, and the sound of pickaxes echoed day and night as workers tore the valuable ore from the stone. But life in Blinman was harsh. The town was isolated, the climate brutal, and the work deadly. Cave-ins, poisonous gases, and the ever-present threat of disease claimed many lives. The cemetery filled quickly, and grieving families whispered that the mines were cursed, that the land itself rejected those who tried to take from it. And then, the copper began to run out. By the 1900s, the copper deposits had dwindled, and mining became less profitable. People began to leave, seeking better lives elsewhere. The final blow came in 1918, when the mine shut down for good, leaving behind rusting machinery, empty buildings, and a landscape scarred by decades of relentless digging. Blinman became a ghost town almost overnight. Families abandoned their homes, leaving furniture, tools, and personal belongings behind, as if they'd fled in a hurry. Locals claimed it wasn't just economic hardship that drove people away. Strange occurrences plagued the town, tools disappearing, phantom voices echoing through empty shafts, and shadowy figures glimpsed near the mine entrance. Some believed the miners who died underground never left. Others whispered the land's traditional custodians, the Adnyamathanha people, had warned of spirits in the hills, spirits angered by the destruction of sacred sites. Whatever the truth, Blinman's silence became deafening. Today, Blinman is a shadow of what it once was. A few historic buildings remain, and mine tours allow visitors to descend into the dark tunnels where so many lost their lives. But many who visit report unsettling encounters. Cold spots in the mine, even on scorching summer days. The distant clang of a hammer on rock, echoing through empty tunnels. Whispers drifting through the air, too faint to understand but impossible to ignore. And the most terrifying tale of all, the miner with no face. Several visitors claim to have seen a shadowy figure standing near the mine entrance, dressed in old mining clothes. When approached, the figure disappears, or, according to some accounts, turns to reveal a featureless face, as if the mine itself had stripped the soul from its body. Is it the spirit of a miner who died underground? Or a warning to stay away? Despite its eerie reputation, Blinman still clings to life. A handful of residents call it home, running small businesses and welcoming tourists curious to explore the ruins. The town's pub still serves drinks, and the mine tours offer a chilling glimpse into the town's past. But even today, some refuse to stay after dark. The hills seem to breathe, and the abandoned buildings feel watched. Blinman stands as a monument to human perseverance, a reminder of the lengths people will go to chase fortune, and the price they might pay. Because in Blinman, the past isn't gone. It lingers, like dust in the air, waiting. 7. Maytown, Queensland. The story of Maytown begins in the 1870s, during the height of the Palmer River gold rush. Gold had been discovered in the remote wilderness, and almost overnight, thousands of prospectors descended on the area, desperate to strike it rich. Maytown quickly became the largest settlement in the region, with over 20,000 people living and working in the unforgiving landscape. The town flourished with hotels, shops, blacksmiths, and even a school. The streets buzzed with activity, and miners braved scorching heat, deadly wildlife, and relentless disease to claw precious gold from the earth. But life in Maytown was brutal. Lawlessness reigned, and violence simmered just beneath the surface. Fights over gold claims often turned deadly, and murders were so common that locals whispered the town itself was cursed. The Chinese miners, who made up a significant portion of the population, were often targets of discrimination and violence. Some legends even claim that massacres occurred in the surrounding hills, with vengeful spirits still haunting the ruins. The gold was plentiful, but it came at a steep cost. For nearly 2 decades, Maytown thrived. But by the 1890s, the gold began to dwindle. The once booming mines produced less and less, and miners started to drift away, searching for the next big strike. By the early 1900s, only a few stubborn residents remained, clinging to their crumbling town as nature slowly reclaimed it. By 1945, Maytown was completely abandoned, its buildings collapsing, its streets overgrown, and its tragic history buried beneath the red dirt. But something else lingered in the ruins, something unseen. Visitors who trek to Maytown today often report unsettling experiences. Despite the isolation, people claim to hear phantom footsteps crunching through the gravel streets, low voices muttering in forgotten languages, and even the distant clang of pickaxes echoing through the hills. The most chilling tales, however, come from those who have camped overnight. People have woken to find their belongings moved, their tents slashed, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched from the tree-line. Some say the ghosts of miners still wander the area, endlessly searching for gold. Others believe the spirits of the Chinese workers, who were mistreated and killed, linger in the shadows, unwilling or unable to move on. One particularly disturbing legend speaks of a faceless figure that appears near the ruins of the assay office, the place where gold was once weighed and valued. Those who see the figure describe an overwhelming sense of dread, as though their very soul is being drained. Could it be the spirit of a miner who lost everything? Or something older, something tied to the land itself? 6. Big Bell, Western Australia. In 1935, gold fever swept through the Australian outback once again with the discovery of a rich gold deposit about 30 kilometers west of Kew, Western Australia. The Big Bell mine was established, and with it, a town quickly sprang up to house the influx of miners and their families. At its peak, Big Bell had over 850 residents, complete with shops, a post office, a school, and even the Big Bell Hotel, which boasted the longest bar in Australia at the time. The town buzzed with life, and the promise of wealth lured people from across the country to this isolated stretch of desert. The mine itself was a marvel, one of the largest open-cut gold mines in Australia during its time. Workers toiled long hours beneath the blistering sun, digging deep into the earth to extract precious gold. But while the town's surface shimmered with promise, danger lurked just beneath the ground. Mining accidents were not uncommon. Crushed limbs, gas pockets, and deadly cave-ins claimed the lives of more than a few workers. Some say those miners never truly left. For a while, Big Bell thrived. But like many mining towns, its survival was tied to the whims of the gold market. By the 1950s, the mine's output began to dwindle, and gold prices dropped. The town's population slowly trickled away as people abandoned their homes in search of better opportunities. In 1955, the mine closed, and with it, Big Bell died. The town was officially abandoned, and its buildings were left to decay under the relentless desert sun. The hotel, once the heart of the town, became a crumbling shell. The church, where families once gathered for comfort, stood eerily empty. And the mine, which had given life to the town, became a gaping wound in the earth, a place some locals whispered was cursed. It didn't take long for stories to spread. Travelers who stumbled upon Big Bell claimed to hear strange sounds echoing through the ruins at night, footsteps crunching on gravel, the faint clang of pickaxes hitting stone, and even the distant hum of men's voices singing old mining songs. The Big Bell Hotel is said to be especially haunted. Explorers report cold spots and an overwhelming feeling of being watched. Some even claim to see shadowy figures flitting through the doorways or standing silently at the bar, as though waiting for a drink that will never come. One chilling rumor speaks of a ghostly miner who appears near the old mine entrance. His face is said to be gaunt and sunken, his clothes torn and covered in dust. Those who've seen him say he raises a lantern and silently points back toward the town, as if warning visitors to leave before it's too late. Is he one of the miners who died in a cave-in? Or a restless spirit forever tied to the gold he never got to claim? No one knows. 5. Joadja, New South Wales. Joadja sprang to life in the 1870s, built around a rich deposit of kerosene shale. The Australian Kerosene Oil and Mineral Company saw opportunity in the valley's natural resources, constructing vast mining and refining operations to extract shale oil. Workers, many of them Scottish immigrants, were brought in to toil in the scorching heat of the valley, carving out a living beneath towering cliffs. The town flourished, with over 1,200 residents, a school, a post office, general stores, and even a theater to distract from the relentless grind of mining life. But Joadja was never an easy place to live. The valley was remote, accessible only by treacherous dirt tracks, and the town was entirely reliant on the company that built it. Still, life pushed on. Workers distilled oil in massive brick retorts, families raised children in simple stone cottages, and the local Scottish whiskey distillery provided a rare comfort to the weary miners. But beneath the surface of prosperity, Joadja was slowly dying. By the early 1900s, the demand for kerosene shale dwindled as cheaper alternatives like crude oil emerged. The Australian Kerosene Oil and Mineral Company collapsed, and with it, Joadja's lifeblood disappeared. One by one, families packed up and left, their homes abandoned to the elements. The railway that had finally connected Joadja to the outside world was torn up, severing the town's last tie to civilization. By 1911, Joadja was a ghost town, its buildings left to crumble, and the valley claimed by creeping vines and silence. But the silence wasn't as empty as it seemed. As the town decayed, stories of hauntings began to circulate. The miners' cottages, with their blackened stone walls, became notorious for strange occurrences. Visitors reported hearing the sound of boots crunching on gravel outside, only to find no one there. Some even claimed to see shadowy figures standing in doorways, watching from the darkness before vanishing into thin air. The valley itself seems to breathe with unseen energy. People have described hearing disembodied whispers echoing through the ruins, and others have felt sudden cold spots, even on scorching summer days. The Joadja distillery is perhaps the most haunted site of all. It's said that one of the distillers, who died in a tragic accident, still lingers. Tourists have reported hearing the faint clink of glass bottles and catching the scent of whiskey in the air, despite the distillery being long out of use. And then, there's the phantom miner. Some who dare to wander Joadja at night claim to see the figure of a man, still dressed in soot-covered clothes, stumbling through the ruins with a lantern in hand. Legend has it he's searching for his lost family, unable to accept that they left him behind when the town was abandoned. Unlike many ghost towns, Joadja hasn't been completely forgotten. The site is now privately owned and carefully preserved as a heritage destination, with guided tours that take visitors through the decaying ruins and tell the story of the town's rise and fall. But those who visit often leave with more than just historical knowledge. They talk of an overwhelming heaviness in the air, a weight of sorrow that clings to the valley. And many leave with an unsettling feeling, as though unseen eyes are still watching them from the shadows. Joadja isn't just a ghost town, it's a living relic of hardship, hope, and despair. It's a place where history refuses to fade, where the echoes of pickaxes still ring through empty streets, and where the spirits of miners may still wander, forever trapped in the valley they once called home. 4. Farina, South Australia. Founded in 1878, Farina was meant to be a thriving agricultural town. Its name, Latin for flower, reflected the settlers' ambition to transform the arid landscape into fertile farmland. Optimism surged as the Gwalia Railway connected the town to the rest of Australia, and for a time, Farina flourished. It became a bustling hub, with 2 hotels, a bakery, a post office, a school, a police station, and even a brewery. At its peak, around 600 people called Farina home, living in sturdy stone buildings designed to withstand the desert's brutal conditions. But the desert is unforgiving. Farina's fate was sealed by nature itself. The land was not as fertile as settlers had hoped, and unpredictable droughts turned their dreams to dust. Crops withered, livestock died, and water became scarce. By the early 1900s, people began leaving in search of more hospitable land. The Gwalia Railway, once the town's lifeline, bypassed Farina in 1980, severing its last connection to the outside world. By then, Farina was already abandoned, its buildings left to crumble, swallowed by the relentless desert. But what truly makes Farina eerie isn't just its isolation. It's the stories that linger. Visitors who explore Farina's ruins often report chilling experiences. The Farina Cemetery, with graves dating back to the 1800s, is said to be haunted by the restless spirits of settlers who died in hardship. People have described hearing footsteps crunching on gravel when no one is around, and seeing shadowy figures moving among the graves at dusk. The old bakery, partially restored by volunteers, carries an unsettling energy. Workers restoring the site claim to have heard faint voices, and the scent of fresh bread lingering in the air, even though the ovens have been cold for decades. The most persistent legend is that of the phantom stockman. Travelers camping near the ruins have reported seeing a lone figure on horseback, patrolling the outskirts of the town. His face is never visible, and he vanishes into thin air if approached. Some say he's the spirit of a drover who died of dehydration, forever roaming the desert in search of water. Despite its eerie reputation, Farina isn't entirely forgotten. A dedicated group of volunteers work tirelessly to preserve what remains, restoring buildings and sharing the town's history with visitors. The Farina Restoration Group even reopens the bakery for a few weeks each year, bringing a spark of life back to the ghost town. But even with tourists wandering its streets, Farina still feels off. The silence is heavy, the ruins seem to watch, and many visitors leave with the unsettling feeling that they weren't entirely alone. 3. Walhalla, Victoria. In 1863, prospectors struck gold in the rugged mountains of Victoria, and Walhalla was born. The town flourished as miners swarmed to work in the Long Tunnel gold mine, one of the richest mines in the region. At its peak, Walhalla housed over 4,000 people, with shops, hotels, a school, a post office, and even an opera house clinging to the steep slopes. The town was alive with energy, miners braving the darkness of the earth, families carving out lives in the unforgiving wilderness, and businesses thriving on the back of the gold rush. But Walhalla's success was precarious. The town's isolation, surrounded by dense forest and treacherous terrain, made life difficult. Supplies were scarce, and bushfires and landslides constantly threatened the fragile settlement. Yet, the gold kept people anchored to the mountains, until it didn't. By the early 1900s, the gold veins began to run dry. Mining operations dwindled, and people started to leave, seeking fortune elsewhere. The Long Tunnel mine closed in 1914, and Walhalla's population dwindled to just a handful of residents. Homes were abandoned, businesses shuttered, and the once bustling streets fell silent. The forest slowly reclaimed the town, vines creeping over the skeletal remains of buildings, and the mountain casting a long shadow over what was left. By the 1950s, Walhalla was officially a ghost town. But not all who lived there seemed ready to leave. Legends of ghosts began to circulate almost as soon as the town emptied. Visitors reported eerie encounters, flickering lantern lights moving through the trees at night, whispers echoing through abandoned buildings, and fleeting apparitions of miners covered in soot. One of the most haunted locations is the Walhalla Cemetery, perched precariously on a steep hillside. Graves cling to the slope, many belonging to miners who died in tragic accidents or from diseases that swept through the isolated town. Visitors have claimed to see shadowy figures standing among the gravestones, vanishing the moment they are approached. The Long Tunnel mine itself is another hotbed of paranormal activity. Guides who run underground tours speak of sudden cold spots, tools mysteriously moving, and the sound of distant pickaxes striking rock, as if ghostly miners are still laboring in the darkness. And then there's the Walhalla railway station. The railway, which was painstakingly built to connect the town to the outside world, arrived too late to save Walhalla from decline. Today, the station is said to be haunted by a spirit known as the Phantom Passenger, a figure seen standing on the platform, waiting for a train that will never come. Despite its ghostly reputation, Walhalla has been lovingly preserved. It's now a historical tourism site, with restored buildings, mine tours, and even a working replica of the Walhalla Goldfields Railway. But even with tourists wandering its streets, the town still feels unsettled. Maybe it's the isolation, the weight of history, or the tragic stories carved into every crumbling wall. Or maybe the spirits of Walhalla simply can't let go of the town they built. 2. Silverton, New South Wales. In the 1880s, rich silver deposits were discovered in the harsh Australian outback, and Silverton sprang to life almost overnight. Thousands of miners and fortune seekers rushed to the area, desperate to claim their share of wealth. The town boomed, pubs overflowed with rowdy workers, streets buzzed with merchants, and homes sprouted from the desert floor. At its peak, Silverton had 3,000 residents, a hospital, a school, churches, and over a dozen hotels. It wasn't just a town, it was a wild frontier, a place where miners celebrated their good luck with reckless abandon and where saloons echoed with drunken laughter and the clink of coins. But fortune is fickle in the outback. By the late 1890s, the silver veins began to dry up. Worse still, a richer, larger silver deposit was discovered just 25 kilometers away, in what would become Broken Hill. One by one, miners packed their belongings and abandoned Silverton, chasing bigger paydays. The exodus was swift. Homes were dismantled and moved to Broken Hill, leaving behind only stone foundations and skeletal ruins. By the early 1900s, Silverton was nearly empty, its streets consumed by silence and shifting sands. Despite its abandonment, Silverton never completely faded away. The remaining structures, a few crumbling houses, a church, and the iconic Silverton Hotel, stood defiantly against the desert. And soon, the town attracted a different kind of visitor. Filmmakers discovered Silverton's eerie, post-apocalyptic charm, using it as a backdrop for movies like Mad Max 2 and Razorback. Tourists, thrill seekers, and ghost hunters followed, drawn by rumors that the town wasn't just haunted by history, but by something darker. Visitors to Silverton speak of strange occurrences. The Silverton Hotel, once a hub of minor revelry, is said to be haunted by a ghostly patron. Staff have reported glasses flying off shelves, unexplained cold spots, and the faint sound of boots stomping across the wooden floors when the bar is empty. The Silverton Jail, now a museum, carries an even darker energy. Built to contain the town's most violent criminals, it's a place where suffering lingers. Visitors describe hearing chains rattling, feeling unseen hands brush against their skin, and sensing an overwhelming feeling of dread in the old cells. And then there's the desert itself. Some claim to see shadowy figures wandering the ruins at night, miners who never left, still searching for silver beneath the scorched earth. The most chilling tale is that of the phantom miner, a ghostly figure seen walking along the dusty roads at dusk, only to vanish into thin air when approached. 1. Gwalia, Western Australia. In 1896, prospectors struck gold in the harsh desert lands of Western Australia. The Sons of Gwalia mine was established, and people flocked to the area, hoping to turn dust into fortune. The town was named after the Latin word for Wales, paying homage to the miners' roots. It quickly grew into a bustling community, with wooden cottages, a grand hotel, a general store, and even a single-room schoolhouse. But Gwalia wasn't just another mining town, it was a melting pot of cultures. Italian, Yugoslav, and Australian miners worked side by side, their lives shaped by the unforgiving outback. At its peak, over 1,200 people called Gwalia home, and the mine thrived under the management of Herbert Hoover, who would later become the 31st President of the United States. For decades, the town flourished, but as the gold supply dwindled, the mine struggled to stay afloat. The final blow came in 1963, when the Sons of Gwalia mine abruptly shut down. Within 24 hours, the town was abandoned, families packed their belongings, left their homes, and disappeared. It was as if life had been drained from the town overnight. Houses were left untouched, dishes still on tables, children's toys scattered across dusty floors. The Gwalia Hotel, once filled with laughter and music, became an empty shell echoing with silence. But some say Gwalia was never truly deserted. Visitors to the ghost town report chilling encounters, shadowy figures spotted through broken windows, the sound of footsteps crunching on gravel when no one is around, and disembodied voices drifting from the empty buildings. The abandoned mine is said to be the most haunted spot. Workers who descend into its depths speak of cold spots, sudden equipment malfunctions, and the faint sound of pickaxes striking stone. Could it be the spirits of miners who perished in accidents, still toiling in eternal darkness? Locals tell of a miner's ghost, a spectral figure who roams the ruins of the mine, his lantern casting an eerie glow in the dead of night. Some claim he's searching for lost gold, while others believe he's protecting the town from those who disturb its slumber.